Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh, the Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Ripp, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Ripp live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.
We start to learn how to have these conversations. You're living with each other every single day. You face trials together. You're on the same team. Then you bring in the in-laws.
In-laws don't make it easy sometimes, right? They have their own expectations for how their daughter's going to be treated. Everybody brings these expectations, and nobody talks about it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Christy Wright Show. I'm so excited because today we are talking about how to deal with in-laws. Yeah, and I'm going to explain why I did deal in air quotes. And then I get to sit down with the brilliant Dr. John Delony, who's a Ramsey personality, and he's also just really stinking smart, and he's my friend. And we're going to talk about this issue even further to help you have the best relationships possible. But first, let's talk about how to deal with in-laws. Now, why do I say it that way? Because that's how you say it. Y'all, I have been coaching people for over a decade, and whether I am taking questions through the Christy Wright Show, through a book signing line, whether I'm on the Dave Ramsey Show, taking calls with Dave Ramsey or one of the other Ramsey personalities, every single time I'm asked about this question, it's always phrased that way. How do I deal with my in-laws? How do I deal with this relationship? How do I deal with the holidays? And let's just go ahead and acknowledge something by the very way that the question is asked. It doesn't sound good, right? Like, I don't say about my best friend that I have so much fun with, how do I deal with my best friend? Am I right? No. I'm like, man, I get to hang out with my best friend. My best friend is awesome. We have so much fun. How do I deal with this relationship immediately implies that it is a tough one. And you know what? Even if you have really awesome, healthy, loving people in this relationship dynamic, it's still hard. Now, I will say that you will see this pop up between different family members depending on the family, how many people, the different marriages, kids involved, holidays, tradition, how the whole family came to be. But there's one particular relationship that research shows is the hardest of all. Mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. This is not my version. It's not my perspective. It's not even my experience necessarily, but I will tell you that this is what I hear about the most. And I've even done some reading on this because I'm asked about it so much, and I have tried to navigate my relationship with my mother-in-law the best that I possibly can. I want to understand it. I want to understand, why is this relationship so hard, even if you have 2 perfectly healthy, loving, normal people? Well, it's interesting because when you are merging families and you have the older generation of the parents, so in this case, Matt's parents, Forrest and Pam Wright, and then you have the younger generation, me and Matt and our 3 kids, you have a family within a family. And so there's all these expectations, there's all these traditions, there's all these different values and feelings, and when you start to put them all together, it can get hard. You can have conflict. You can have tension of, well, I think you should do it this way. Well, we did it that way. Well, we're going to do it this way. And we're spending holiday at this place. And man, you can really have hurt feelings. You can have bitterness. You can have resentment. And you can have a difficult time where you don't know how to deal with your in-laws. Now, I'm happy to tell you that I don't deal with my in-laws. I love my in-laws. I have a fantastic relationship with my in-laws. Matt's parents are wonderful people, and particularly his mom and I have become really close, but I want you to hear something loud and clear. It didn't happen by accident. Pam and I did not wake up super close, feeling really connected with a really great relationship overnight. And it didn't happen accidentally. We didn't just wake up one day there. We worked really, really hard. We actually have had hard conversations. We have had lots of different situations. We're trying to work through it together of her expectations and my expectations. We've had conversations that I think probably most mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws just don't take the time to have, or maybe they're just too scared to have. But I'm so thankful that we had, because we're so close now because of it. If you want to have a great relationship with your in-laws, if you want to stop dealing with them and actually get to have an awesome relationship, it's going to take some intentionality and hard work. You know, for this particular Christy Wright Show episode, I decided to ask my mother-in-law. I was like, I'm not going to teach on this subject and not consult with her. So I called her and I said, hey, can I just interview you? I know this sounds crazy, but I'm asked about this all the time. People really struggle with their relationship with their in-laws on both sides. The daughter-in-law struggle and the mother-in-law struggle, and no one's sure how to navigate this. And I feel like you and I do a pretty good job. So can I just ask you some questions to build this episode out with your input? And of course she said, sure. And so Pam Wright and I came up with this together. And these are 5 rules for you to have the best relationship possible. And if you're a mother-in-law listening or watching right now, these are 5 rules for you to do as the mother-in-law. And if you're the daughter-in-law listening right now, these are 5 rules for you to do as the daughter-in-law. And if both people do this, or even if one side does this, watch how the relationship improves. So your first rule is this: appreciate everything. You would be amazed at how the entire relationship changes when you appreciate the other person first. You start there. You don't get there as a last resort. You don't, after a bunch of conflict, think, well, I guess I can think of one thing I'm grateful for. No, start there. Start from a place of gratitude. Let me give you some specific situations. Let's say that you're a daughter-in-law and you're like, my mother-in-law is so overbearing. She wants to see the kids all the time. I just wish I could have some breathing room. Okay, that may be valid. But there's something you can appreciate in that. You can say, you know what? I'm so thankful that my mother-in-law wants to be involved. I'm so thankful she loves my kids so much. She's so willing to help, and she's so willing to be available. There are people whose mother-in-laws are not involved at all. I would never want that. I'm so grateful that she takes an interest in my kids' lives. See, you're taking a posture of gratitude, and it changes the entire dynamic of how you look at that situation. It doesn't mean your feelings are invalid. It doesn't mean that can't be improved, but it does change how you approach it when you approach it from a place of gratitude. Now, if you're mother-in-law, let's look at a scenario for you. Maybe you're thinking, I don't get to see my grandkids enough. She never lets me see them. They're so busy. I never get to see them. You're comparing yourself with your friends that see their grandkids all the time. See, there's an opportunity here where you can actually appreciate how often you do get to see them. There are people that don't get to see their grandkids at all. There are people that their grandkids live across the country, and maybe yours are closer. Maybe yours are even in the same town. When you approach it from a position of gratitude, I'm so glad I get to see them this much. I'm so appreciative of when I get to see them. See, for the daughter-in-laws and the mother-in-laws, you're approaching the relationship completely different when you're grateful. So your first rule for all of you listening and watching, if you want to make this the best relationship possible, is simply to appreciate. To appreciate. Your second rule is this: invest in the relationship like you want it to be good. Yeah, breakthrough, right? Some of you are sitting around going, my in-laws, how do I deal with them? And you're not trying to deal with them. You're not trying to do anything. You're just complaining. You don't call them. You don't take an interest in them. You don't show them love. You show up for the obligatory family events and you have a scowl on your face when you do it. You can't expect the relationship to be good when that's how you act. If you want the relationship to be good, like really want it to, invest in it like you want it to be good. Spend time with them more than just the obligatory requirements of family in your family situation. Take an interest in them. Ask them what they're doing. This is for both sides, by the way. If you're a mother-in-law, don't just ask about the grandkids. Ask how your daughter-in-law is doing, how she's feeling, what she's working on. If you're a daughter-in-law, ask your mother-in-law what she's doing, how she's feeling, what she's working on. Don't just call her to ask her to keep the kids. Take an interest in this person like you would any person that you want to have a good relationship with. Spend time with them, engage with them, ask them how they're doing, and most of all, show them love. real love, love in action, love them well. When you build a foundation of love with your in-laws, it removes the transactional component of we're in the same house and we're at the same Christmas gatherings because we happen to be married. It's I'm going to be in relationship with you because I love you and I choose you. And I'm going to treat you like someone that I choose and I love. And I'm going to invest in this relationship like I want it to be good. So your first rule is to appreciate everything. Your second rule is to invest in the relationship like you want it to be good. Your third rule is to communicate anything that's important to you. Communicate expectations most of all. Communicate values, communicate needs, communicate wants, communicate holidays and traditions, communicate boundaries. Now, let's just camp here for a second because this can be an area of tension on both sides. Just because you want it and you communicate it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. But if you don't communicate it, it definitely won't happen. If you don't communicate what your expectations are for Sunday night dinner or for Christmas or for your children's birthdays or for anything, it definitely will not happen. If you communicate it, it at least gives you this vision for you all to align around, a goal, a finish line of like, hey, well, we can't do Sunday night dinner, but could you do Monday lunch? It gives you all something to work toward together where you're playing from the same playbook, you're on the same page, you understand what's going on. This is one of the biggest hurdles between any relationship. I love the quote by George Bernard Shaw that says, the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's occurred. We think we've communicated. We think people are mind readers. We think they know what we want, but they don't. Communicate anything that's important to you. Now, if you're a daughter-in-law, might go to your mother-in-law and say, hey, here are my expectations for the birthday party this weekend. What are your expectations? What are your desires? You're going to have to figure out to find this common ground. You might be a mother-in-law and say, hey, I've got an expectation that Christmas is going to go like this. And the daughter-in-law might say, it's not going to go like that. We're not traveling for Christmas this year. And there will still be opportunity, of course, for disappointment. Of course there will. Because at some point you realize these are two separate families. Yes, the mother-in-law sees it as a family within a family, but the daughter-in-law is going, this is my family, and we're going to do things based on what our household, my spouse and I, our kids, what's right for us. So you're still going to have conflict. This doesn't totally remove it, but what it does is it gives you a common ground to work from. It helps you in love communicate, this is what we're doing, here's what's right for us, how can we find a common ground to where you're happy and your expectations are met and we're happy and our expectations are met and everyone is honored in the process. So communicate anything that's important to you. The fourth rule is this, be confident. Now, I know that sounds really silly, but here's the problem when you're not confident. Insecurity tells you that other person's actions are a threat. Insecurity weaves these stories and narratives together for you that are not true and that damage the relationship. Insecurity puts a wedge in the relationship. So be confident. If your mother-in-law doesn't text you back, don't assume, see, I knew she never liked me. No, instead think, she's probably really busy. I'll catch up with her later. If your daughter-in-law says, hey, we're not going to be coming, to your house this Sunday for Sunday dinner, we're doing something else. Confidence says, hey, cool, they've got something else going on. Maybe I'll hang out with my friends, or maybe I'll do something, maybe I'll have a night alone. I'll do something different. Versus, well, we're not important. We're not valued. They don't like us. See, insecurity will spin up these stories that are simply untrue. So when you're confident, you approach the relationship from a place of strength, not insecurity, and you're setting the table for a better relationship. So your first rule is to appreciate. Your second rule is to invest like you want the relationship to be good. The third is to communicate anything that's important to you. The fourth is to be confident. And the fifth and final rule is to empathize. Put yourself in their shoes. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Think, man, it'd be really hard to have always had Christmas this way, and then they don't get to have it this way anymore. So maybe if I put myself in their shoes, I could find a common ground. Maybe we don't come down on Christmas Day, but maybe we come down on Christmas Eve. Or maybe if we can't open presents on Christmas morning like they want there, maybe we'll do a whole nother Christmas morning on Tuesday or on the weekend after. When you put yourself in their shoes, it gives you an understanding and appreciation for where they're coming from. And that's from both sides. If you're a daughter-in-law, put yourself in your mother-in-law's shoes. Think, man, she might be sad. She might be disappointed. She might feel like, we've forgotten her. Maybe I'll just shoot her a text. Maybe I'll send her a note or a card. How can I show her love and put myself in her shoes? How can I give her the benefit of the doubt and give her grace? If you're a mother-in-law, your daughter-in-law doesn't respond, maybe think, bet she's really busy. Bet she's tired. Bet she's got her hands full. Because every time I've ever seen her, she's got her hands full. Maybe I can just offer to help. Maybe I can send her an encouraging text or encouraging note. What's so amazing is that in the vast majority of the relationships, the mother-in-law is healthy and loving and wants a good relationship. And the daughter-in-law is healthy and loving and wants a good relationship. It's still hard, but y'all, if you have two people that are healthy and loving and want a good relationship, there is no reason in the world that they shouldn't have a good relationship. But I really do believe with these 5 rules for the mother-in-law, for the daughter-in-law, for every family member for that matter, if you follow these rules and actually do it and put it into practice in your life, you can make these relationships the best relationships possible. All right, y'all, I'm so excited to hang out with my good friend and fellow Ramsey personality, Dr. John Delony.
What's up? How are you doing?
Welcome back.
You doing good?
Yeah, so this is your second time on the show.
Yes.
And we wanted to bring you back because you're really smart, you're really fun, and you sit right next to me, so here you are.
Yes.
It's just very convenient to
You
just
don't know that
drag you down here.
Our desks are like right next to each other. It's awesome.
Yes. So we are talking about something that is a major pain point on today's show.
Okay.
And you and I have talked about this offline, kind of like, up in the offices, just like, hey man, that's like, people really struggle with this, and you're a doctor, you've been a counselor, you have a lot of experience. So I want to dive into this topic of the in-law relationship. And let me tell you how people ask me this question. That's right.
Yes.
All the anticipation. Let me tell you how people ask me. Here's how they phrase it every time. How do I deal with my in-laws? Well, just by the way you asked the question, you're like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
This is like,
Yeah.
I don't talk about relationships that are going awesome. Like, how do I deal with them?
Right.
So I want to dig into this. Let's first just start with the idea of relationships, not specifically in-laws. Relationships are hard.
Yep.
And you have walked with people in all seasons of life and through really, really hard times. Talk a little bit about just like, why are relationships in general so hard? And then I want to dive into the in-law relationship specifically.
I think everybody brings a particular picture of what they think their life's going to look like. Mm-hmm. And whenever you join in with somebody in a relationship, whether it's a friend relationship, a working relationship, or a marriage relationship, mm-hmm. you're combining two people's pictures. And sometimes they're undefined. They have this feeling, I'm going to feel this way. Right? And that's going to dictate whether I'm in love or whether this is going to work or not work or whatever. Right. But you're bringing two pictures together. And then when you bring in-laws in, you got 2 or 3 or 4 or sometimes 6 or 8 different pictures all converging at once. Yeah. And everybody's still trying to speak into this ill-defined, is it my picture, is it yours? And it just is a recipe for a mess.
That's a really good point, because even as you were talking, the first year of marriage between Matt and I, it was really hard. Mm-hmm. And everybody talks about that first year of marriage, like, oh, it's the newlywed phase and everything's just butterflies and rainbows and you're so happy, you're so in love. Like,
mine was a dumpster fire.
It was so hard.
It was the worst.
It was so hard. And it was exactly what you're saying. You come in with this picture of what marriage is going to be like. For us, the biggest pain point was the house. And we didn't even have kids.
Yeah.
It was just like, he had a way of doing things and I had a way of doing things, and cleaning and routines and responsibilities. We both worked full time. And there was a lot of just difficult conversations. And well, why do you think it should be done this way? Well, I thought it was, and it was hard. It was just really, really hard because we brought these different pictures of what it was going to be like. And they weren't the same.
And we didn't know to talk about it.
Right.
I just had been collecting concert posters. And they were going to go in our living room.
You mean we can't have
They were going to be so cool. Yeah. And my wife dismissed it out of hand.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're going to put all these posters. And she said, no. And then just moved on.
Yeah.
And then I go real existential. Is this the rest of my life? Why can't I have music in the room? And it's turned into this whole thing.
Right.
And then she had a picture of what our little crummy apartment was going to look like, right? And it was not old punk rock posters all over the walls, right?
Imagine that. I can't imagine
so, but we didn't know, and so I went this way, and she went that way, right?
Yeah.
And then I had a picture for what Thanksgiving was going to be.
Right.
Hers is very different.
Right.
Easter in my house, my dad would get up and go to the door with a sack of those old individually wrapped marshmallow hard candies.
Yeah.
I love them.
Okay.
And he would say, hey, kids, turn around. And we'd all turn around and he'd throw them into the yard and go, look, the Easter bunny came. And we'd all run out. My wife, Easter was this. The whole family
Weeks of planning. Oh, yeah.
It's this weeping, everybody comes together. And when I was like, we're not doing Easter, it was a thing, right?
Yeah.
We didn't know to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I thought she was crazy. She thought I was crazy. And then we were off to the races, right?
Oh, yeah. When you talk about the concert posters, it made me think of Matt had this recliner that, wait for it, he and his roommate from when he was single bought a 2-for-1 deal on Nolensville Road. It wasn't leather. I don't know what it was. Wasn't attractive, that's for sure. And I know. He's like, why are you taking away my recliner? Why do we have so many throw pillows on the couch? I'm like, because they're attractive. It's just all these conversations of the picture that you have of things going like that. And what's interesting is I think in marriage, we have these, we start to learn how to have these conversations. You're living with each other every single day. You face trials together. You're on the same team. Then you bring in the in-laws. And you're not living together. You're not talking every single day. I think at least I'll speak from experience, and I want to hear your thoughts on what are the different dynamics that are in the in-law relationship. I am way more polite, or at least try to be, with my in-laws because it's not my mom and dad. I'm more blunt with my mom. We are like best friends, maybe to a fault.
Right.
We're so close. We're so comfortable with each other. And so it's this, I want to be polite. You're not a stranger, you're family, but I need to be communicative about these expectations and about, holidays or whatever. Let's talk about the in-law relationship specifically. What are some of the dynamics at play, in addition to maybe these expectations and pictures that we're talking about that we have in our head? What are some different dynamics that make it particularly hard to navigate?
One is what you just mentioned, which is this performative aspect. I'm going to play a role to satisfy this event.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting and it's frustrating. And if you're a grown-up and your kids are running around, at some point I start to think, why can't I just be direct about this? Or why can't I just speak my heart and mind on this thing? Sometimes it's people don't like the way, like you love Matt. Well, if his mom or dad talks to him in a way that's demeaning or weird or is an old throwback to a relationship they had when he was growing up, you're like, don't talk to my husband that way, right? And so it creates tension there. Or don't talk to my kids this way.
Yeah.
Or my kid knocked something over and suddenly I feel like the spotlight's on me and I'm being judged and all. So there's just so much performance.
Yeah.
And then in-laws don't make it easy sometimes, right? They have their own expectations for how their daughter's going to be treated or their son is going to be treated and how his wife is going to run this. You know what I mean? So everybody brings these expectations and nobody talks about it.
Yes, and I don't think they know how to talk about it. Because here's one of the things, and I will say this is not a secret in our family dynamics. I think I have talked to Matt's mom about things that, like just open, like, hey, what do you think about this, whatever. Because I'm an Enneagram 8. I kind of go headlong into things, and I'm just super open, sorry, Flower, about things that they would probably never even talk to each other about. Because they have a culture of super polite, and to them it's like, I want to respect this person, I want to not, ruffle feathers, I don't want to make waves. My mom and I, the opposite extreme. Like, we probably just share too much that's on our minds. Like, you could learn to, like, have a little bit, So what's interesting is Matt and I's personality is different. Our family culture and background is even more different. And so then you bring these together, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate his world in a way that's respectful but true to me. And that's hard.
They sense that tension.
Yeah.
And they either blame themselves and try to overcompensate, or they get frustrated that you brought tension, right?
Yeah.
And so when you go into a situation with people that are your family, people feel that disconnect or that leaning into it, and there's that tension, right?
Yeah.
And so finding that balance between being in-laws, being the grown-ups, and saying, be fully you here. You are welcome at my house to be messy and crazy.
Yeah.
I'm going to not perform.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be chill and calm because this isn't about me.
What about the people? Because one of the things I've talked about is I have a really good relationship with my in-laws, but it didn't come easily. It came through a lot of hard work on both of our parts. Like, they have been so loving and accepting of me, and I have tried really hard to learn their family culture and be myself in that. Even though that family culture may be different or whatever. When we talk about expectations or boundaries, what's so difficult, I think, about the in-law relationship, and not even just my own, but I watch friends, I have people call into the show or call into the Dave Ramsey show, and you get these questions, it's this weird dynamic because you have a family, let's say my generation, okay? So the family that has like parents of younger kids, okay? And then you have the grandparent generation. Right. And it's this family within a family.
Right.
And so the grandparents are saying, well, this is how we do Christmas. That's how we do holidays. You're a part of our family. And then the younger family's going like, well, we're kind of a separate family and we do it this way. And so it's a family within a family and you've got this overlapping expectations. How do we navigate that and say, okay, I want to be a loving, respectful member of, our grandparents' family. And we also have another side of the family. Right. And we want to be true to what we want to do for our kids and what's right for us and our traditions and our rhythms and that type of thing. How do we do that? Because I think that's where a lot of the conflict lies. The older generation has certain expectations because they see the family as everybody. And the younger individual families see themselves as a separate family. So does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we back out, my grandparents, when my parents showed up to an event with my grandparents, we were, I have an older sister and a younger brother, we were the representation of how well they were doing.
Okay.
Were we behaved? Was our hair combed? Was our shirts tucked in? Were we acting right? And that was a signal to their parents, my grandparents, that all was well in the Delony house, right? And if it wasn't, there was some talks to be had. The next layer, our parents are different. They want to almost relive parenting generationally. So they want to see the chaos and the fun, not too much, and it's exhausting.
They want to be in it.
But they like the silliness and the fun, and they don't like the this, right? And so it's navigating it, and then you and I, we want, with our spouses, we want to create our own universe, right? So to me, it starts with couples sitting down and saying, what hills are we going to die on?
Okay.
You will not disrespect my kids. You will not disrespect or disparage other ethnic groups or political groups, or we're not going to talk about these things. You won't be drunk at Thanksgiving, or I'm going to get my family, we're going to leave. But this idea of what are the hills we're going to die on, right? And then being firm enough to say, we're going to leave. Being firm enough to say, I'm exhausted from work this year. We don't have the money to travel. We're going to be upfront with our parents and say, we can't travel this year. It's not going to happen. And if there's ever a year to reset family traditions, it's this one, right? But it's saying, here's what we're going to die on. And then the rest of it is, me and my wife get to choose to be grown-ups.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember taking a call on the Dave Ramsey show where it was literally someone calling in and they said, how do I deal with my in-laws? And it was, I don't even know what the question was, but Dave spoke up, which was interesting because he's in the grandparent generation seat right now with him and Sharon and their 3 grown kids that have kids, so he has grandkids. He said, he said Sharon gets frustrated sometimes with, decisions or whatever's going on with the kids and the grandkids. He said, I have to remind her, you don't get a say. And he said, that's hard because we want to say. As grandparents, as parents of our kids, we want to say and we don't get a say. And that's hard. It's way easier for him to say than me to say. You're going to say.
Absolutely.
But I think it's interesting. Let me ask you this when it comes down to communication, because and again, my relationship with my in-laws has been me figuring it out. I've never read a book on this. I'm not an expert on this by any means, but I will say that the things that I've been intentional about in my relationship with my in-laws has been so it's just so much fruit. Like it's beautiful and it's been beneficial to both of us, and we both have leaned into the relationship being great. So that's why I feel like, well, let me at least share what one of the things that's worked for us. So if there's a conflict or if there's a difference in expectations around holidays or what the kids are going to do when or whatever the thing is, I go directly to them. I don't ask Matt to go to them. So I'm curious your thoughts on that, because I think some people feel like, well, it's your mom, you go fix it. Or he would say to me, your mom's being crazy, which she can be, as I can be. Gotcha. You go fix it. I think some people do that. Which way would you say is more healthy? Because I've always felt like, well, if the conflict or making plans is happening between her and I, it's weird to ask my husband to go speak up for me like I can't communicate myself. What would you say?
So my rule of thumb is a natural planner emerges out of every couple.
Yes. Usually the woman, most likely. Women, seriously,
often,
a lot of times we're planning the childcare, planning the calendar, planning the holidays.
Right. So my wife does the communicating. We're going to be in town these 4 days. We're going to have our kids. We're going to get a hotel. We're not going to stay at your house. We're going to do this. And she'll send an email to make sure everybody's on the same page, because we forget. Everybody's busy running around. If there was a disagreement, if my dad thought there was something morally wrong and he popped off to my wife, it would be my responsibility to go handle conflict and drama.
Okay.
Or if she sent something out to which my mom replied, that's ridiculous. I don't get to see your kids. They will be at my house for Christmas morning. It would then be my job to call my mom.
Okay.
Right?
To stand up for her.
But whoever's doing the planning, there's a natural role there.
Right.
And in my brother-in-law's house, he will let us know, here's my work schedule. Here's where I'm able to get off. Here's where the whole family is going to come. So every family's different.
Yeah.
But it's the conflict that it's my responsibility to do with my parents.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. One of the things I've just kind of done intuitively, or I guess naturally with conversations and planning, because I know that's a big point of conflict. That's why I keep asking you about this. I know a lot of people struggle, and I get so many questions, which is why I want to talk about this. I get questions from people, and I'm thinking, well, here's what we do, but I'm not an expert on this. So one of the things that I've started to do is if my in-laws, usually it's my mother-in-law because she's the planner, asks me to do something for our family, to do something. So like, do you guys want to go on a beach trip? I'd like to go on a beach trip this year. I don't answer right then. I say like, let me talk to Matt, obviously. But when I go to Matt, here's what I do. I'm very intentional because my husband is so kind and he's easygoing. He's just kind of like whatever. I will say to him, hey, your mom asked me for us to go on a beach trip this year. It's your family. What would you like to do? Now, of course, I have an opinion. I got an opinion about everything in this world. But I don't want to share my opinion out of the gate because I know that'll sway his response. And I want his natural response. So he'll say, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, no, good try. No. What do you want to do? And then let's discuss it. But I want his authentic, because it's his family. So I want to respect the fact that even though she asked me because I'm the planner, I want to know to my husband, it's his family. Now, if it's my family, I usually have like a stronger opinion of like, hey, I really would like to, this is really important to me to go to my dad's house for this or whatever, or it's not really, what do you think? But what are your thoughts on that in terms of how the conversations go?
Yeah, we do the same in our house. And both people have a responsibility in that. Okay. One is I need to speak up. Even if I know that my wife doesn't want to go spend a week at the beach with my family, if that's an important moment for me,
that's right.
I need to have the courage and the honesty and the integrity to say, I need to go.
Yeah, that's important for us to go. Yeah.
And we need to be okay. And my wife and I have done this several times. When my grandmother was slowly passing away, I woke up one day and said, I need to go home. I need to go to, and I still call Houston home. I haven't been there in 27 years, but I need to go home and see my grandmother. Yeah. And I told my wife, I got a sense I need to go home. And she said, go.
Yeah.
Right. Once I went by myself. Another time she figured out that she could arrange her work schedule, and we all went, right? But sometimes I go by myself. Sometimes we go together. I need to have the courage to speak up and be honest and not be like, whatever, dude. I know she doesn't like my family, so I'm not going to. No.
Right.
And she does love my family because my mom and dad are huge Christy Wright fans. And then vice versa. Yeah. She needs to give me the space. I need to give her the space to honestly say, we need to go home. We need to go visit them. I want to go visit them. Yeah. And let's be authentic with each other.
Yeah. I think some really key words you can use in the in-law conversations or in the marriage relationship is just, this is important to me. Because if I just throw something out there like an idea, Matt may not know it's important. He may be like, I don't really want to do it. But if I say, hey, this is important to me, it's like he perks up. He's like, oh, okay. And vice versa. If he says, this is important to me, you make decisions differently when you know your spouse really cares about this. You made an interesting point a minute ago about the generational expectations and generational how they view parenting and whether the kids are healthy, happy, what involvement.
Sure.
One of the things that I've been kind of researching lately is even from a cultural perspective. So this idea that Matt and I, our family unit is us and our 3 kids, is a very Western, individualistic idea. Yeah. There are other cultures that are more collectivist cultures, where you have 3 generations living in the same household. And the idea of splitting off or doing your own thing or not deferring to your parents or older generations would be offensive. Right. And so I think it's really important, even as you are navigating this, to understand what are, like you said, what are the expectations generationally, culturally, even regionally. In the South, we're very different than people are in the North, and when we get married and that type of thing. And so I think that's really helpful.
It just comes back to communicating, right? And honoring each other's family. Yeah. And it's important for me as we enter the holiday season, once I've said we're going, I have to be all in. Yeah. Me going and whining and moping.
No.
And being
have a good attitude.
An energy drag.
Right.
I'm all in.
Right.
This holiday season, I'm going to be sleeping in a camper on acres out in the middle of Central Texas. And I don't know what we're going to have for Thanksgiving. Yeah. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. We're going to be in the woods. Yeah. And I said I'm all in. It's going to be cold. Yeah. It's going to be like no showers. Yeah. And I will be all in because I said I was going to go.
That's right.
Right.
I like,
so once you're in, Be all in. It's not about you anymore.
That's my rule. That's my rule for myself, but it's also the expectation I have, I think, for other people. And maybe I don't say it this bluntly. I'm like, go with a good attitude or don't go.
Yes.
If you're going to go with a bad attitude, please don't go. I would rather, and that's true for anybody, anytime. I'm like, go. And that's true for me when my heart's on it. It's like, I'm going to choose to have a good attitude or I'm not going to go. Yeah. Okay, one last question, because I know that this is, and we've talked a little bit about it, but I'd love some specifics here. Let's unpack, what does it look like to set boundaries in a healthy and loving way? So let's just paint a scenario here. And I've had a question about this before from my Academy members in the Business Boutique. So holidays are coming up. Let's just use that as an example. The younger family says, we're going to be spending Christmas at our house this year. We want Santa Claus to come to our house. We're going to be spending Christmas at our house, and we don't want to travel. We don't want to pack up the kids and travel. How do they communicate that in a way that's loving and firm? And part 2 of this question is, if there are guilt trips, if there are, I'm just going to be so lonely at Christmas, if it's not received well, which I would like to say I've never experienced in communicating with my in-laws. But if that's not always the case, sometimes they get pushback, conflict, guilt trips. How do they handle it?
I love it.
How do they do that? That's so hard.
So here's a big moment in a couple's history. I would recommend folks get a box and put it on their kitchen table.
Okay.
And as a couple, I want them to write down, who are we going to give permission to speak into our life, right? Who are we going to give permission to hurt our feelings, to hold us accountable, to call us out, and who's going to go in this box? And I think it's a good exercise for every couple to do. It could be your pastor and their wife. It could be your marriage therapist. It could be a couple's friend that you've had forever. And then once you get in that box, and there should be 4 or 5 names, that's it. You will recognize that his parents aren't in there. Your parents aren't in there. And so starting the conversation with, they don't get a vote. They don't
like Dave said, you don't get a say.
They don't get permission to ruin your holiday. I'm not going to give that over to them. I'm going to hold on to that. Yeah. And if they choose as adults to passive aggressively pull down your holiday, to whine, to say, like, I'm just going to be, that's their decision. Yeah. I'm not going to own that. Yeah. And it takes some practice, right? Yeah. To not pick up those texts, to not answer those calls. One of my sayings I always used to give to folks is, don't take whiskey to grandmother's house, right? Okay. If you're somebody who drinks and your grandma says no, if you're like, I just got to be me, dude, it's the holidays, don't do that.
You don't have to be.
Honor your grandmother,
right?
If one of your core values is we don't go into debt, in this particular year, you got furloughed for half the year, your hours got reduced, and we don't have the money, then putting a trip on the credit card to go have another visit at grandma's house is a violation of one of your core tenets, right? That is you not being authentic in you. That is going to set you up for a stressful trip. It's going to set you up for a stressful upcoming year. And so that's when you don't want to violate one of your core values. If one of the core values are, we don't talk about politics at Thanksgiving, and you've got that one uncle that just won't shut up, we're going to choose to not go, right? And I'm going to go back on something I said earlier.
Okay.
You're the planner. And your mother-in-law texts you and says, we want to go on a beach trip this year. If you are all in on that beach trip and you and Matt talk and we're going to do this, y'all work out the details and that's awesome. You're the planner, she's the planner, it's going to be work. It's going to be awesome. If someone's got to break the grandma's heart, it needs to be Matt. He needs to be one that calls and says, hey, we can't do that this year. Or we're not going to be able to make that trip. Not, Christy didn't want to come, right? You're going to own that.
Right.
And so if I'm going to have to break my mom's heart, I'm not going to make my wife do that.
Okay,
right?
but now I'm curious though, why is that? Because to me, it's awkward if the request comes to me to then send the answer through my husband.
And what I would feel a responsibility to say, hey, we talked about it, and I'm going to call my parents and I'm going to own that we're not coming on this trip.
But she didn't ask you.
I know she did.
She asked your wife.
She did.
And then it seems like you're passing the buck.
It is.
Going like, poor me, I can't stand up for myself. Well, my husband, please speak up for me. Can he speak on my behalf? No, it's like, I think it has the integrity.
It does. You're right. Okay, scratch all that.
I want to work through it.
I think you're right.
Because, but I would say that I am so, when I've been in that seat of having to decline, an invitation, and we've all been there.
Yeah.
I am so intentional about being loving. Like I want to make sure that she still feels loved, even though we're not showing up for whatever that thing is. I don't want them to feel forgotten.
Yes.
I don't want them to feel not valued.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want them to feel like they are not loved, they are not needed, they are not important, because they are all of those things.
Yes.
And if I'm not careful when I say no to that thing, that invitation, they might feel that. They might conclude that I'm not
you don't
loved,
have
needed, or
ownership
valued.
of those, right?
No, I
You
don't.
have ownership
but
of
I
how
just
you
want
say it. Right,
yes,
right,
I just
right.
want to be super loving and
Yes,
affirm
yes,
my
yes,
love
yes.
for them in that. And there are times that if the request comes through Matt, then Matt answers. I don't answer but I think if the request comes through,
I'm thinking of it out loud now, and so I'm thinking in my own house. If my mom texted my wife and said, "We want you guys to come," and she heard I met, and we were not going to be able to come, I would feel this sense of responsibility to call my mom and say, "Hey, thank you so much for calling. We talked it over. We're not going to be able to make it." But if my father-in-law reached out to me directly and said, "Hey, I want y'all to come," and me and my wife talked, I'd call him back too.
for sure you wouldn't make your wife.
Yeah, you're right. I'm wrong. You're right.
No, I think
Ladies and gentlemen, Christy Wright.
no.
CW genius. It's awesome.
Here's probably
you're
what
right.
it comes
You're
down
right.
to. It probably comes down to whatever's right for you and more reflective of the relationship. I have a great relationship with
Right.
my mother-in-law, so of course I would respond.
And my wife
and maybe
and my
if
mom,
you don't, then that wouldn't be right. You know what I mean?
I'm so sensitive to people thinking negatively about my wife, and so I tend to. I'll
Step in.
I'll handle this. And
Yeah.
my wife is a gangster, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't need anybody stepping in. At the end of the day, it's about us communicating, right?
Yeah.
And not living our lives out of other people's expectations for us.
That's good. This just showcases how hard it is, though.
It's so hard.
It's hard, and it's hard with people that you love and you want to respect, and you still want to have your own life and be true to you too. But anyway, this is so good. I love what you just said there too about the communicating expectations. I could talk to you all day, but I want to talk about this book before we wrap up. It's a quick read, which is basically a little book.
It's a little book.
Can we put that in your marketing? Hey, buy my little book.
It's a little book.
Buy my mini book.
That's right.
Anyway, it's awesome because it's a quick read. You can literally, consume it in one evening, two evenings.
Right.
Tell me what it's about. Redefining anxiety, what it is, what it's not, and how to get your life back. You're an expert on anxiety. You've walked with people through this. And now this is giving them something in their hands to understand what's going on in their body and their mind.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about
We're
it.
just in anxious seasons.
Yeah.
And we're living it right now, every day. And what we've been told about what anxiety is and what it means is just not true.
Yeah.
And this book it's little and it's pretty jagged. It's pretty pointed.
Yeah.
Gets right to the point.
I've seen you speak. You don't really hold back.
No,
you don't beat around the bush. You just
I'm
go
tired
on.
of people hurting, and I'm tired of people being told that that's just going to be the way things are, or this is just the way you were made, and sorry, or you could, but this is just going to be happening, or you're going to have to take medicine for the rest of your life. I just don't like those messages, and so this is a direct response to some of the nonsense I've heard, and I've lived it. I got crippled by it too, and so I spent years trying to figure out what happened in my own heart and head, and that's this journey.
I love it. Thanks for writing on it. I know this is going to help so many people. Tell them where they can get a copy.
You can go to johndelony.com, daveramsey.com, and we're going to be having some social media pushes, and so it'll have all the links where you can buy it. Amazon.com, you can get it there too.
Got it. Thanks so much for being
You're
here.
awesome.
All right, y'all, I would love to share a scripture with you that helps us keep all of this in mind as we are trying to build a great relationship with our in-laws. This is from 1 Peter, and this is 1 Peter 4:8. It says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sin. I love that reminder, as simple as it is, but I know that in our relationship with other family members, y'all, it's hard. You have different values, you have different expectations, you have different traditions, different boundaries. Everyone's coming from a different perspective. But I love this reminder in 1 Peter 4:8. It says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. How many things would be solved if we just loved each other? How many things would be easier if we just thought of how we can show love first? I love how Michael J. Fox says, family is not an important thing, it's everything. And I know it's so easy to get frustrated with family. You get frustrated with your immediate family, with your extended family, with your in-laws. Gosh, it's easy to take them for granted because we live with them. We're used to them. They're around all the time. But you know what? It's also this sacred relationship. It's a role that no one else gets to fill. And it's this unbelievably special bond that we get with these particular people. That's why it's on us to lead the relationship. So I don't want you to sit back waiting for the other person to act a certain way or to behave a certain way or to speak up first, to reach out first. Don't sit back and take a passive approach. You and I have an opportunity to love first. You and I have an opportunity to lead the relationship. You can lead that relationship through taking an interest in the other person, through communicating everything going on, through setting boundaries, through empathizing, putting yourself in their shoes. There's so many different things you can do to lead this relationship to make it the best it can possibly be, so that you truly are honoring it as everything. Family's everything. And I don't know what type of situation that you're in, but I pray that you can use these tips and this verse as an encouragement that you can love others and you can lead the relationship. So I've got a few questions for you as you process this and think about how to apply it to your own life. Your first one is this: what are 10 things that you are grateful for about your in-laws? Yeah, 10. You should be able to come up with 10 easily. Write down 10 things that you're grateful for about your in-laws. All right, your second question is this: what is one healthy boundary that you want to set and communicate? Maybe you've never thought about this before. Maybe as I'm talking about this is the first time you've even considered not only boundaries, but communicating those boundaries. So what is one healthy boundary that you want to set and communicate with your in-laws? Write down your answer. And your third question is this: what is one way that you're going to show love to your in-laws this week? What is one specific way? Maybe you have more than that, but at least one. What is one way you're going to show love this week to your in-laws? Write down your answer. All right, I'd love to pray for us as we wrap up. Lord, thank you for family. Thank you for all of the different ways that we get to experience family, from our immediate family to our extended family to our in-laws, godparents, and every possible other relationship that makes our life so beautiful and so whole. And even though it's hard, Lord, even though there are things that surprise us and frustrate us, God, you brought us together for a reason. And we do have so many things to be grateful for. Lord, I pray right now for every person watching and listening that they would feel equipped and empowered to lead those relationships, to love first, to show up and serve in a way that makes that relationship the best that it can possibly be. I pray that they show you to those people in their life. I pray that they are a light in those relationships. And as a result, every single person is better because of it. God, I pray that you would show up and let your Holy Spirit connect people that are hurting, that are having a hard time. Lord, I pray that you would clean out any resentment or bitterness, any brokenness, that you would inject these relationships with your love and the power of your Holy Spirit. We're so grateful that you love us and that you bring us together. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all so much for joining me as always, and you can tune in next week for another episode of The Christy Wright Show. Of course, for more encouragement on building confidence in yourself and the God that created you, you can visit ChristyWright.com.
Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh, the Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Rip, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Rip live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.